Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can assemble your own pair of jeans. Now I'm using my pattern created from our tutorial on how to create patterns from existing clothing jeans series. You could use your own jean patterns from that series or a commercial pattern. Your example may be a little bit different than mine, but hopefully you'll still be able to follow along with most of it. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and jump right into creating our jeans. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take jeans front. Now you have two of these, but I'm just going to show you on how to do it with one. You would do the same exact thing with the other one. So here's my jeans front. I have it right side facing up. I'm going to grab the front pocket piece. And you can see this is sort of a lightweight cotton, so it's definitely not out of my denim, but it's on the inside, so it doesn't matter. And I'm going to place them so the right side to right side, matching up the notches. I have one here and here, and then this curve here. Now I'm going to go ahead, pin the curve only, and we're going to sew a seam in this area here. For my seam, I just do a regular straight stitch. Definitely don't forget to back stitch on the beginning and end. And your seam allowances just depends on what is designated for your pattern. I am doing a 1/2 inch, but yours may be different. After you finish sewing your seam, you're going to trim your seam allowance. So I'm leaving about 1/4 inch left, and then in the curvy parts, I usually like to cut these little inverted notches. So when we flip this to the other side, so the wrong side of the jeans front, it doesn't get all bulky over here. So I'm just going to turn this all over, and I'm going to give it a good press, and what you're going to end up with is something like this. So this one's already pressed. Next, I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to do 2 sets of stitches. So I'm going to first do an edge stitch, which means you're going to sew as close to the edge as you can. And then I'm going to do a top stitch, which is going to be 1/4 inch away from the edge. So first one, close to the edge, second one, 1/4 inch away from the edge. And you're just sewing this curved section. The first stitch I'm doing is the edge stitch. You can see how close I am to that edge. I'm just lining it up with this inside part here of my foot. So it gives me sort of a guideline to follow. Don't forget to do your back stitching because we want to make sure that our stitches are not going to come out. Next I'm doing the top stitch. So this is the one that's 1/4 inch away from the edge, and you'll see this a lot with jeans. There's always 2 rows of stitches, something similar to this. Now for both of these I'm just doing a regular straight stitch, and the length is just a regular length. We're now going to move on to the right pocket. So this is the little tiny pocket that's usually on the inside of your right front pocket. If you have them on both sides, then you can go ahead and repeat the process for the other pocket as well. But I just have one. So I have one fabric piece to my pattern. You're going to flip it over so you're looking at the wrong side. At the top edge of your pocket, you're going to fold over 1/2 inch, and then you're going to fold over another 1/2 inch. You're going to pin and press it into place, and then you're going to sew right along the bottom of that hem. While you're still looking at the wrong side of your pocket, you can see mine is stitched down now here at the top. You're going to take each of the sides of the pocket and you're going to turn it over to the wrong side, whatever your seam allowance is. So I did 1/2 inch on this side and 1/2 inch on this side because that's what my seam allowance is. You're going to pin and press it. Our little pocket is then going to be placed on one of our side front pieces. And this is right side up, this is right side up. Now the side front is usually for the right side front, and I have my side seam here on the left hand side, because when you cut this out you should have cut 2 of them. So I'm just making sure that I'm doing it for the right one. Once it's in place, I have these little marks for my pattern piece showing me where to place the pocket. You're going to then transfer your pins to pin the pocket to your right side front, and then you're going to do the double stitches. So we're going to do edge stitch, top stitch, and then the same thing on this side. So remember, edge stitch is right on the edge, and then the top stitch is 1/4 of a way in from the edge of the pocket. Your pocket should now be attached to the right side front, but we have this hole. So we're going to finish this curved edge of the side front, and I'm going to actually do the same thing for both of them. So here's our left one and our right one. So on the curved edge, I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to do either a zigzag or overcast stitch, something to finish this edge. So it's going to look nice and neat and it's not going to unravel. Because this is still not attached together, if you want, go ahead and pin this portion, but once you have this finished, then this pocket is going to be closed on the bottom as well. I'm using an overcast stitch in a contrasting color just so it's a little bit easier for you to see when I'm finished. If your machine doesn't have an overcast stitch, just use a regular zigzag stitch, which is fine. Take each of your side front pieces and you're going to place them with one of your front stays. Now this is also part of the pocket piece. So again, since it's on the inside of the pocket, I just cut it out of regular cotton fabric. You're going to place them so it's going to be right side up, right side up. And you can see I'm matching my single notch over here to make sure I have everything lined up. And the raw edge are meeting. You're going to pin the raw edges together and you're going to do a basting stitch. So basting stitch across here, basting stitch across down here. So it kind of just holds everything into place. Then I'm going to do a regular stitch, and this is kind of like an edge stitch where I'm just going to stitch right along this curved area, attaching this bottom part to the front stay. And you can see my example on my other side front. So this is the one without the pocket. So my basting stitch up here and here, and then I just did a regular stitch over my overcast stitch on the curved edge. Take your jeans front pieces and place them so they're wrong side facing up. Then you're going to take each of your side front pieces and you're going to match them with the jeans front. So when you place it so it's right side down, so you, on both pieces wrong side is facing up, you're going to be able to match a double notch over here if you have it, a single notch up here, and then just start pinning it into place. Now I'm not going to pin all the way to the edge of the white over here or the edge of the white over here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of my white pocket pieces, lift them up, and you're going to match and pin the raw edges. So I'm going to do it over here, and I'm also going to do it over on this side as well. Now if your white piece happens to go all the way to the crotch curve, you can just do the bottom as well and just pin it over here. But because mine doesn't go all the way over here, I'm going to pin here, here, and then sew whatever my seam allowance is. So again, we're just sewing the pocket pieces together, not the actual jean pieces. And I have an example. So this is the other side. And you can see I do have some pins holding it into place, but here I just have a regular seam for these two sides, and that kind of starts creating our pocket. So I can start using my pocket, but it's still going to be open over here on the side seam. After your pocket seams are created, I'm going to finish pinning what's left over here to the front. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. So I'm just pinning it because next we're going to do a basting stitch to temporarily hold this top edge and this side of the pocket to the front. So if I was to flip this over, your basting stitch would be here and here. We don't need to really go into this area because again, we're just making sure that the front is being attached to this piece here, and this is the section that it needs to be attached. Take both your front pieces and you're going to place them together right side to right side, and we're going to line up this crotch curve area. And I have this circle here, which should be on your pattern or something similar. You're going to sew a seam with these two pieces together. So I'm going to start here, sew a seam, and then stop 1.5 inches from the end. So from this end, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches and then make a mark. It could just be a very small area that you're sewing. So you're going to sew that seam, and then we'll move on to the next part. The two sides are now attached in this one little area right here. I have this wrong side facing up now. So on the right leg, which is going to be the leg that has the little pocket. You're going to take the raw edge above where you sewed and you're going to turn it right side to wrong side 3/8 of an inch. Just go as far as you can go before you hit the stitches, and you're going to press it. I flipped my jeans over to the right side. So this is the same area that I just turned over 3/8 of an inch. Now we're going to start putting in our zipper. So here's my zipper. I'm just using a regular all-purpose zipper, but you can definitely use more of the jeans metal zipper if you wish. Depending on how long the zipper needs to be, you may have to shorten it. So if you need help with that, check out our tutorial on how to shorten a zipper. I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to place it so that this folded edge lines up right alongside the teeth of my zipper. So it's not going to be overlapping, it's just going to be right along the edge. Now you should have a mark down here, either a square of some kind or another mark that shows where the end of the zipper should be placed. So I'm talking about the zipper stop, not the end of the zipper tape. So where the stop is, that's where that mark gets lined up. If you're having a little trouble finding out where to line it up, just know that your zipper tab should be whatever your seam allowance is down from this raw edge. So if I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance for my waistline, I measure down a 1/2 inch and then I know where to put my zipper tab. And I'm just going to pin this into place. And then either by hand or using your machine using a zipper foot, you're just going to baste alongside this folded edge. So that's going to temporarily attach our zipper to the side of the pants. Next, you're going to take your right fly piece and you're going to fold it in half. I have it right side facing up, so fold it in half, right sides together, lengthwise. Now you may have a slightly different shape than mine. Mine's just basically a rectangle. So on one of my ends, I'm going to sew whatever my seam allowance is. If you have one side that is slightly curvy, then you're going to sew your seam allowance on that curvy side. Here is the seam line I just created. You're going to then trim your seam allowance, flip it right side out so we don't see those stitches anymore, and then go ahead and press it. So it's going to look nice and neat. On the two raw edges here and here, you're going to do a basting stitch. Then on this long raw edge, go ahead and do an overcast or zigzag stitch in order to finish it. I just want to point out that on my right fly, the basting stitches are on my seam line. So if I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, they're a 1/2 inch from the raw edge. I'm now going to attach this to the back of the zipper section, the raw edge here at the top. So this is not the side that we end up sewing, but this is the raw edge. Should line up with the raw edge of the waistline. And now these basting stitches here should be as close as you can get to that folded edge. This is as close as I could get. These stitches going down my fly should line right up with these basting stitches. So you may have to, this part may be a little bit tricky. What I like to do is just kind of line it up best I can. And you see lining up here at the top of the raw edge. And the bottom of my fly pretty much hits where my stitches start down here. So in order to test if their basting stitches are matching up, I'm going to take a straight pin, put it through the top set of basting stitches, and then I'm going to flip it over. And here's my needle, so it's way off. So I just need to adjust it and then try again. So I'm going to pin it. If you want, you can baste it again, so you can take out your pins and have a basting stitch hold everything together. And after that, you're going to then switch to your zipper foot and stitch right on top of this basting stitch. And that's going to be a permanent stitch attaching all of these elements together. Let's go ahead and look at the fly facing piece. Now out of my pattern, I'm only cutting one out of my fabric. Some patterns request that you apply fusible interfacing to the wrong side of this piece. Other cases, it's not there. So it can be your choice on whether or not you want to stabilize this piece. The first thing I am going to do though, is I'm going to finish this outer curve area. So again, this is a zigzag stitch or an overcast stitch or something similar to that. After I finish with that, let's go ahead and bring in my pants again. We're looking at the right side, and this time we're going to be working on the left side of the pants. So I'm going to take this raw edge of the crotch curve over here, match it up with the straight long edge of my fly facing. So you can see the finished edge is on the outside. Make sure this top part matches up. You're going to pin, match any notches, marks that you have, if you have them. And then I'm going to sew whatever your seam allowance is. After you finish sewing that, go ahead and trim it. Take the facing piece, turn it to the wrong side of the pants, and you're going to press this edge. So the seam line is going to be right on that folded edge. And then you're going to do an edge stitch. So as close as you can to this folded edge, you're going to stitch a regular line stitch from this top to the bottom. Take the left side of your fly and you're going to overlap it on the right side. Now I have this line from my pattern which marked the center front line. The edge of this left side should line up with that center front line. And then you can either take it to your machine and do a basting stitch to hold it, or I'm just going to use needle and thread and just do a quick hand basting stitch just to hold it in place. This is just a temporary stitch and it's not going to be permanently in our pants. Turn your pants over so you're looking at the wrong side. You're going to take your fly facing and your zipper, hold them together, and then take all this and we're going to move it over to this side. I'm just flipping it over. So then you just have your fly facing and your zipper by itself. If you want, you can pin these two together. You're going to take this fly part and you're just going to fold it out of the way because you're going to go to your machine with your zipper foot and you're going to stitch the zipper tape to the fly facing and get as close as you can to the teeth. So you want to get pretty close attaching these two pieces. For sewing on the zipper, I'm just using a regular straight stitch. Don't forget to back stitch on both the end and beginning, and if you want it extra secure, go ahead and do 2 rows of stitches. Going back to the right side, you're now going to stitch on your stitching lines following these lines here, which should be on your pattern pieces. Now you do have to be careful. If I was to flip this over to look at the back, so this is the fly facing, this is the fly. You want to make sure that you move this out of the way so you're only sewing on the fly facing section when you do your stitches, because if this is over here and you sew it and you actually stitch this, it's going to be really hard to unzip your pants. So just move it out of the way. You could pin it if you want. And then go ahead, do a regular stitch for these 2 rows of stitching lines. At this point, sewing in our fly is almost complete. So I'm going to flip this over back to the wrong side. Now here's my fly. I'm going to go ahead and let it rest over so it's on top of the other side, covering up our zipper and our fly facing here. And one of the last things we're going to do for this area is you're going to take your fly facing and your fly and you're going to stitch them together. I'm just going to grab some needle and thread. And it's just going to secure these 2 pieces together. Now I'm not sewing through the actual front of the jeans or the pocket or anything. It's just these 2 pieces. And you can just do it in this area here. I don't have to go all the way over here. You can, of course, if you want to. But we're just making sure that this bottom portion, that they're secured together. You can then go ahead, remove your base stitches you had put in overlapping these 2, and we can test out our zipper and make sure that it's working correctly. Go ahead, flip your pants over to the wrong side. So here's the zipper portion up here. Now remember, we have this part of the crotch curve still not sewn together. So go ahead, pin the rest of the crotch curve and go ahead and sew your seam allowance. If I were to look at the wrong side, now this is the crotch curve that I just sewed, you're going to take this seam allowance, you're going to keep it closed, and you're going to press it towards the left leg. So that's the side that has our double stitches up here on the fly. Then looking at the right side, you're going to do the edge stitch and the top stitch. So the edge stitch means that you're sewing close to the seam line, and then top stitch is 1/4 inch away. So I'm only sewing up to where the bottom of the 2 stitch lines are, and then go to the bottom of the crotch curve here. So that's going to attach all this seam allowance towards the left leg. Let's go ahead and move on to the back leg. So here's one of my back legs, and then I also have a back yoke piece. I'm going to show you on one leg, but you're going to do the same thing for both. You're going to take the back yoke and you're going to sew it to the top of your back leg. It's going to be right side to right side. You're going to match up the ends and any notches that you have, and then go ahead and sew whatever your seam allowance is. You're going to press the yoke up away from the pants, and your seam allowance here is going to be pressed down towards the pants. So again, the seam allowance is going to stay closed, and it's all going to be underneath on the pants side. I already have my other leg done. So here again, yoke, back leg, seam allowance going towards the back leg. And then we're going to go ahead and do our top stitching set. So edge stitch, top stitch 1/4 away from the edge stitch. Now if you're thinking, well, I really want to use the normal top stitching thread, that's the traditional gold color, you can definitely do it for these steps where you're doing your finishing stitches. I would just recommend doing the top stitch in the top part of your machine, and then in the bobbin you're using regular all-purpose thread. Next, we're moving on to the back pocket. So you should have 2 of these, one for each back leg. We're going to start it off the same as doing our little pocket on the front leg. You're going to look at the top part of the pocket. You're going to fold it over. We're looking at the wrong side now. So right side to wrong side, fold it under 1/2 inch, then fold it another 1/2 inch, press it, and then you're going to sew right along that bottom folded edge. So that's going to finish the top of your pocket. Then we're going to be folding in the sides of the pocket, whatever your seam allowance is. So if you want to have a mitered corner, you're going to turn in each corner a little bit. So I would turn in all these corners, and then I would turn it over my seam allowance for my pocket. So that's going to be a 1/2 inch, and then a 1/2 inch over on this side. Now if a mitered corner is difficult for you, you can just keep it simple like I did here. I just turned over a 1/2 inch on the side and then a 1/2 inch on the bottom. Because this is going to be on the inside of the pocket, nobody's going to see it anyways. So once you have it all pinned into place, go ahead and press it, and then we can put it onto one of our back legs. On your pattern pieces for the back leg, you should have marks showing you where to place your back pocket. So once you have your back pocket all turned under and pressed, you can go ahead and use those marks to line it up, and then transfer the pins to go through all the layers to hold the pocket into place. Then you're going to do edge stitch on the side. Of course, we're not going to do the top because we need to have this stay open so we can put our hand in it. And then after the edge stitch on the 4 sides, you're going to go ahead and do a top stitch, which is going to be 1/4 inch away from the edge. So I already have this one done on my other pant leg. So there you can see the back pocket is now on my back leg. Place your back legs together, right side to right side, matching up the crotch curve area, and then you're going to stitch a seam here. The seam that we just created is going to be pressed towards the left leg. So if you're looking at the right side of your pants, it's going to be pressed towards this direction. And then you're going to do your 2 rows of stitching, both the edge stitching and top stitching, for the full length of the crotch curve. You can place back and front pant legs together. Make sure to place them right side to right side. And we're going to sew our seam now for the inner leg seam. And this is going to be one continuous stitch. So you need to make sure that the ends of the pant leg match on both sides. Also, that the crotch curve matches. So where you have your seams, you're going to pin here, here, and here, and then ease everything else in between. So when I take it to my machine, I'm going to start here, sew around, and then end here. When you finish your inner leg seam, the seam is going to be pressed towards the front of the pants. And then you're just going to do an edge stitch. So you're just sewing along the seam line. You're not doing the 2 stitches like we normally do. Then you're going to take each of the front and you're going to fold it over on top of the back, and you're going to match up and sew the outer leg seam. So I'm going to do it on this side, and then I'm also going to do it for this leg over here as well. And then you're just going to go ahead after it's pinned and sew your seam. The seam from our side seam now gets pressed towards the back leg. So it's going in this direction, and I'm going to do that for both sides. Then you're going to do an edge stitch. So again, we're just doing the stitch that goes right along the seam line, and you're doing that on the back leg side. And you're starting at the top of the waistline, and you're just going down to about here where you get to the bottom of our pocket facing on the inside. So this white fabric, wherever it hits on the inside of the leg, that's where you're going to stop with your edge stitch. We're now moving on to the waistband. Now the first thing I'm going to do is apply fusible interfacing to the wrong side of my waistband fabric piece. So you'll feel one side has little glue bubbles, the other side is smooth. So the side with the glue bubbles goes to the wrong side of the fabric. I have an iron heating up, pretty warm. I'm going to carefully place my press cloth, making sure that I don't shift anything underneath. I'm going to dampen that. And then I'm going to put my iron on it one section at a time until it's all fused. So place it down, leave it down for about 4 to 5 seconds. And then when you're ready to move on, lift it up and then move it over. So you're not just shifting it along, because you may start shifting things underneath, and we want to make sure that it's going to iron on straight and not crooked. So after I get it all fused on there, we'll pretend like I finished. And you can see there's a few little wrinkles going on, so definitely want to be careful and try to smooth it out best you can before you fuse it. Okay, so then the next step, after it's already on, you're then going to take one long edge of the waistband. Like this side has notches, so it's going to be the side that's opposite. We're still looking at the wrong side, and you're going to press up whatever your seam line is. So 5/8 or 1/2 inch, whatever it happens to be, and you're going to press this. Then you're going to trim, so you're leaving about 1/4 inch left. Let's now go ahead and attach our waistband to the top of our pants. I'm going to grab it right here. So my pants are right side out. I'm going to place the waistband right side to right side. And the raw edge of the waistband that we did not fold up, that has all the notches, that's the side that we're going to match up with the raw edge of the waistline here. Now when I start to pin this into place, and I'm starting here with the right edge of the right fly, whatever your seam allowance is, that's how much your waistband is going to go past the edge of the pants here. So here's my fly, and my seam allowance is 1/2 inch, and you can see it's extending 1/2 inch past that, and it's going to be the same on both sides, so this side as well. So I'm going to pin it all the way around the waistline. I like to pin major parts first, so I do ends, side seams, any markings that I have, and then I ease everything else in between to make sure that the waistband is going to fit. Once you finish pinning it, go ahead, take it to your machine, and sew whatever your seam allowance is for your pants. You can always trim off these zipper tapes by this time, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So I'm going to sew my 1/2 inch seam allowance, which is my seam allowance for my project, and then you can go ahead and trim some of that seam allowance off, leaving about 1/4 inch. Your waistband seam allowance, after you trim it, should be pressed up towards the waistband, so it's all going up. Then you're going to take each end of the waistband, so this end and the same thing on this end, and you're going to take your waistband with the right side up, and you're going to fold it in half so that the folded edge up here meets with the folded edge down here. So you're just folding it directly in half, making sure that you're keeping this side folded. Go ahead and pin this together, and then you're going to sew your seam allowance going right up this waistband area. So you're starting at the folded edge and then going up towards the top. So again, I'm doing it this side and then I'm doing the same thing on this side. After you finish sewing that, you can go ahead and trim your seam allowance. Take each end of the waistband and on this side, you're going to turn it right side out. So you'll see here on the right side of our pants, we'll start getting the look of a finished waistband. On the inside, you're going to take the folded edge of the waistband and you're going to bring it to meet your waistline stitches for when you created your waistband seam. So all this raw edge here is going to end up being covered by our folded edge and it's going to look really nice and neat on the inside. And I've already started doing it over on this side. So you can see this side was also folded right side out and then I started pinning it, and what we're going to do is we're going to hand sew a slip stitch right along the folded edge in order to sew our waistband to the inside of our pants. So we'll get a little bit closer to show you what that looks like. Before you start sewing your waistband into place, make sure that you give your waistband a good press. Now I'm going ahead and starting with my needle and thread, and I started the first stitch, so I just came up from underneath the waistband folded side so my knot could be hidden underneath there. Now I'm using a contrasting thread, but go ahead and use a matching thread. I'm just doing contrasting so it's a little bit easier for you to see. So my thread is coming out of the folded side of the waistband. I'm now going to grab a little bit of the pants. So right underneath there, I'm making my stitches fairly small so they look a little bit neater. Now that I'm on the pants side, I'm going to grab a little bit of the folded edge of the waistband. And then after this, I'm going to grab then the pants. So I'm just going back and forth between the two sides until I finish with the whole waistband. To finish off our waistband, we are then going to do an edge stitch. And for this, you're basically going to sew a rectangle. So you're going to sew the ends, go down the bottom, around the whole thing, come up the side, and then do the top. So you can just do it as a single stitch if you wish. With the edge stitch, of course, you're sewing right along the edge of the waistband. Next, we're going to work on the belt loops, also known as carriers. So you should have one single long piece. And I'm going to have it wrong side facing up first. On each of the long edges, you're going to fold over half an inch. So I'm going to fold over half inch on this side and then half inch on this side. And they should just meet in the middle. Go ahead and press it once you've done it for the whole length. After you've done that, you're going to take it and you're going to fold it in half again. So you end up with a long skinny strip. You're going to press that again and then you're going to do an edge stitch on both the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to sew right along the edge of the top the whole length of the way and do the same thing on the bottom as well. Next, you're going to take your strip and you're going to cut it into individual lengths, and each one is going to be one belt loop. Now the length of each of these strips really depends on your pants. So here I have a mark of where my belt loop is supposed to be for my pattern. So if you're unsure, if your pattern doesn't tell you how long you need to make it, I would measure this distance, and that's going to be the length, plus you need some to turn under. Now how much you turn under is really up to you. I'm going to turn under 1/4 inch on each side. So once I do that, I need to make sure that yes, indeed, it is going to fit. And it also depends on what size belt you want to wear with your pants as well. So here's one that I've already pressed under 1/4 inch on each side. So I'm going to go for my first position. I like to do this bottom portion first. I'm going to place it over my mark. I'm going to sew at the edge, and you can do it a couple of times just to make sure it's going to be really secure. So I'm doing a regular straight stitch. Don't forget to back stitch. Just go back and forth a couple of times, and then I'm going to secure it up here at the top of my waistband for my other mark and do the same thing. So you're going to secure it at the top and at the bottom, and you're going to do it for as many of these marks that you have for your pants. Now mine has 5, so that may be the same as yours. All right, so we're getting now towards the end of creating our jeans. So we only have a few things left to do. So the next thing is going to be the buttonhole. Now you should have a mark on your pattern on where the buttonhole is located, and I just do a regular machine buttonhole. Now if you need help doing this or you need further detail, definitely check out our tutorial on how to do a machine buttonhole. Next, we're going to put in the button. Now you can use a sew-on button if you wish. I'm going to go ahead and use these no-sew jean buttons that I picked up at the fabric store. So for these, there's actually two parts. So you have the button or shank part, and then you have this tack part. Now to start, you're going to mark where you want the button to go, and you're going to take the tack part and place it on the wrong side and push it through to the right side. Now to help get started, because sometimes it's hard to actually push through the waistband area, I use a seam ripper and just kind of help create a hole first, so it just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to push that through all the way. Then I'm going to take the button and it's going to be placed on the tack and just push it in as best you can. Now it's not going to go in all the way. You do need a hammer for this, and when you hit it with a hammer, you want to take the button and you want to lay it so it's face down on the table and you're actually hitting on the back of the tack. Now you just need to be very careful that it's going in straight, because it's really hard to take off once you hit it, and that you don't hit it too hard because you could bend your button or the tack part. So you just want to be careful, and it's probably a good idea if you get a couple extra of these buttons, you can experiment on some extra fabric. All right, it's the last step, and that means we're taking care of the hem. Now it's a good idea to try on your jeans so you can see if you need to change the hemline and maybe make it a little bit shorter if necessary. Typically what you do, we're going to keep it very simple. It's just like we did with the pocket. You're going to take the raw edge, and my pants are inside out right now, and you're going to fold up 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use my sewing gauge to measure it and then pin it into place. Once it's that 1/2 inch all the way around. Then you're going to press the bottom, and then you're going to roll up another 1/2 inch. So total it's going to be hemmed up 1 inch, so 1/2 inch and then 1/2 inch. I'm going to pin it, press it again, and then just like we did with our pockets, you're going to sew right along the edge of the hem, and you're going to do that for both legs, and then you're done.
Our book, Professor Pincushion's Beginner Guide to Sewing, Garment Making for Nervous Newbies, is now available to order. Go to professorpincushion.com/books or click on the link in the description to see a list of vendors where you can purchase it.